today, and 14, we're going to still, actually, for quite a few chapters, we're still going to be continuing with our nervous system. It's just, this chapter, we finally get to talk about the brain, okay, which is really kind of cool, all right? And when we see or hear the brain, usually what we're going to think about is this, okay? So a lot of times when somebody mentions anything about the brain, this is the part we tend to associate with. What we're going to be learning for quite a while now, what we're going to be learning is how important all of this is in relationship to the brain. When we look at this structure, in the grand scheme of things, the brain of humans over the evolutionary time scale has changed quite a bit. So, if we think about our brains, the brain is an extremely complex structure. Whether we're going to talk about this portion or any of these portions that are here, okay, this structure basically, it controls very complex behavior, whether we are thinking about behavior that we are going to consciously do, or whether it's going to be behavior that is controlling something to the inside. So this particular structure, it gives us the ability for having that fine motor control, maybe the not so fine motor control. It's going to control our respiratory rates, heart rates, the stuff that it is monitoring. For example, one that I find really cool, okay, my heart rate, all right? Now, if any of you had to remember to tell your heart to beat, okay, how long do you think you would last? Okay, I mean, I could forget something from here to the doorway. So, you know, for me, I wouldn't last very long, okay? The stuff that this thing is monitoring is mind-boggling. So, when we begin to talk about the brain, yes, we have what's called major landmarks. When you are in the field, when you're in your clinicals, when you're in your chosen profession, you are definitely going to hear these terms. As we look at this structure, okay, think about how it's sitting inside your cranium, okay? Rostral, towards the nose. Caudal, towards the tail, okay? Because organisms have, caudal refers to the tail, and in our cases, usually referring to something that might have been vestigial, left over, okay, from evolution. So, rostral, caudal, all right? Now, in the spinal cord, if you hear these terms in relationship to the spinal cord, rostral wants to let you know higher up. Caudal wants to let you know further down. Okay? For our purposes right now, we're going to focus on those terms in relationship to the brain. Now, there are three major portions of the brain. we're going to see this largest portion, which is what we tend to think about when we hear the brain. This is the cerebrum. There are two hemispheres, because hemi means half, okay? You know, that thing got a hemi. Y'all ever heard those commercials? No, that's showing my age. All right. It refers to hemispherical. It's in a motor. Kind of makes the motor go faster. Anyway, if you go like buy some trucks nowadays, you can say that thing got a Hemi, and they'll let you know if it's got a Hemi or not. And if it does, the truck's going to go faster. Anyway, okay, so now these two hemispheres, okay, if you look at this brain, anybody else think that maybe it looks like a bunch of pasta? The big noodle pasta? Okay, that's what comes to mind for me, all right? Looks like a bunch of noodles. I'm guessing that's why, you know, they usually can tell, you know, you might hear somebody say, well, go use your noodle, all right? Because it looks like noodles, just saying. However, there are some very prominent parts to the noodle, okay? As we look at it, these markings, we are going to find that we have gyri, all the little squiggly, okay? And in the squiggly noodles, we have some very prominent grooves, okay? So, actually, you know what? Let's share some brains, because actually looking at it and holding it and so forth, that'll help a little bit. Some of them have the pituitary gland attached, nothing except for hold on. There we go. Where's step 2? All right, so if we're looking at this, gyri are these little flat foldings. Sulci are going to be prominent grooves. I'm sorry, are you in the right class?
Yeah, this is anatomy too, right?
Yeah. Okay, so as we're looking at this, all right, you're going to see some very prominent lines that exist. Those are going to be the sulci. When you look at the two hemispheres, definitely a very prominent line going down between the two hemispheres. This is referred to as the longitudinal, long, okay, fissure. When you've got the two hemispheres open, there's a very prominent area that is showing, that looks like it's kind of grayish looking, okay? Technically, it should be whitish, but I'm guessing it's kind of faded. But this area right through here is our corpus callosum. We're going to find out why that's pretty important. Definitely has a very prominent C shape to it. Then, if we begin to either look to the caudal portion or begin to flip it and look at other structures, this prominent structure that's caudal inferior to the cerebrum, that's our cerebellum. Okay? You'll notice when you've got the two halves, because once again, if you've got it together, you'll see that cerebellum is also got a fissure in between it. But you'll notice this very prominent structure that looks like a tree. All right? This is representing what they call the arbor vitae, because arbor means tree, okay, arbor vitae. And actually, this is trying to represent very special neurons that are found in the cerebellum, all right? And then we have our brain stem. What an amazing part of the brain. If you look, it kind of has some very prominent regions associated with it. It is this stalk on what it looks like the cerebrum sits on, kind of, sort of, okay? But the brain stem, we're going to find that we have regions to it, parts to it, okay? So we usually talk about the midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata, but there's another area with it called the diencephalon that is going to be a part of your endocrine system. And what two systems have I repeatedly said are going to control the body? Our nervous system and our endocrine system. Now, let's stop and think for a second. Because if we look at this, if these two systems are controlling the body, if these two systems are controlling the body, are they or are they not closely related? You're going to find, hopefully, what a cool connection